Hello there. What is going on, everyone? Star Wars Shatterpoint time. It's showcase time as well. I've got my core set painted up, and I thought I would share this with you. I wanted to start posting some photos to social media, and I wanted to do like a video. I've had some people I've shown some things to say that they were interested in how I did some of the water effects and different stuff for the bases. So I wanted to showcase some of the different things that I did with you guys, and also offer you the opportunity to share some of your stuff with me. I know a lot of people will be posting their painted miniatures when the Star Wars Shatterpoint comes out in June. They're going to be posting a lot of that on social media. There's different hashtags like hashtag Shatterpaint and hashtag Star Wars Shatterpoint. So definitely use those, and also you can. I'd love to have you share some of your photos and some of your paint jobs in our Discord. We got a great family-friendly gaming Discord in the link in the description below. Plus, if you want any Star Wars Shatterpoint information, I'm going to put a link in the description below as well, where you can click and head over and get all of the rules and the building guides and all kinds of information that are going to be helpful to you if you're looking to get more into Star Wars Shatterpoint. Also, we're doing a huge giveaway right now for a Star Wars Shatterpoint Core Set in the form of a $165 Amazon gift card. You just have to be a subscriber and leave a comment on this or one of my videos to have a chance to win that. That is running till early June when the Star Wars Shatterpoint Core Set is released. We'll announce the winner for that, so make sure you stay tuned. That'll be at the end of one of my videos too. I usually announce winners towards the end because I like for people to watch all the way through. And with all that being said, let's go ahead and kind of do some close-ups and show you guys some of the ideas that I went with here. All right, so first up, I'll just focus on the B1s a little bit. These guys were maybe the most difficult to put together because the leg joints were awfully very small and didn't lock in as large as a full human leg joint would have been. So they were a little flimsy, to if you wanted to just stick them together and hope that they'd lock in right away. So you kind of had to hold them a little bit longer to get them to sort of dry a little bit more. And I also wanted, a lot of times you can just put somebody straight on the base, but I wanted to set these down while they were drying because I wanted to make sure I had enough room to put all of I hated the idea of having two on the base and then the third one didn't have room to go with. So they took me probably the longest to assemble, but still they weren't hard to assemble. But out of everything, they had the highest, I guess, time curve as far as how long they would take to put together, and you didn't want to have the legs dry weird so that one was like this and then they wouldn't stand up straight and they were wobbly and stuff like that. So that was definitely something to think about with these guys. Now B1s aren't particularly hard to paint. I made these a little darker than my Star Wars Legion B1s, and then added a little bit of dry brushing and a little bit of edge highlighting on the legs, just very, very light. Usually I just kind of do a kind of a sand kind of type of color, and then usually a brown wash with Agrax Earthshade, and then take that same kind of light sand paint, maybe add a drop of white to it, just a tiny little bit, make it a little bit lighter, and then kind of hit some of the raised areas to make some of those surfaces pop a little bit. Now, the bases is definitely something that is going to be different. A lot of folks were kind of going with the regular basing for these. And the basing was kind of a weird mix of rocky, sandy terrain and then metallic metal plating. And I wasn't really sure I liked that that kind of aesthetic. It certainly does match the terrain that comes in the core set, but I might not always play on that terrain. And I decided I was going to do something a little different. Because I'm only just I'm an all right painter, but I'm not I'm not a professional quality painter. So I thought, hey, let me do something fun and cool with the bases. This way I can kind of raise the whole model up a little bit more and then have more time to customize it and have some fun with it. So I used a Vallejo sand. It comes in a big jar, and it's kind of got this brown kind of earthy texture to it, and I sprinkled on a little bit of grass bits, and then I used some grass tufts, and I used a combination of tufts from 3 or 4 different manufacturers. So used all the tufts I had just laying around. I also used these really, really tiny rocks. Now you can get rocks from your front yard or whatever, just from the ground. But I actually bought rocks because I wanted them all to be kind of super, super tiny. And so I have this whole jar full of tiny little pebbles, and they work perfectly. And so they look pretty good just to have a little bit of variety on the bases on these. All right, next up is Kalani. Kalani was a little easier to do, but still maybe the second hardest because the joints in there were very, very thin and small, and so you didn't have huge surfaces to connect to. So I feel like my Kalani ended up, his like pelvis is a little farther forward than I would have initially liked, and he's standing a little bit, his chest is poking out a little bit farther forward, but still pretty good, leaning forward, leaning into the action. I decided to go with the gun and the forward hand. I've come to find in some early play testing that Kalani's actually got a pretty good attack, and so I might want to actually have him shoot a decent amount. So I was like, all right, he can attack pretty well if you want him to. One of the things you'll notice about this one is his little yellow bits. Like they did a really good job with a lot of these models have the raised surfaces, so that makes some of the lines and some of the detail a little easier to paint than would normally have otherwise been. I kind of mixed a little bit of metallic silvery paint with some dark green, and just to try to get that kind of slightly dark green metal color for him, and then did some edge highlighting in more of a lighter green to bring the whole thing together. Wasn't particularly hard. Metallic characters, for me, since I don't do like non-metal metal, I just actually use metallic paints. Makes them very, very quick and easy for me. What made this guy a little bit different is, I think this was one of the first ones I did a water base on. And so when I'm doing a water base, a lot of people will ask, and I use basically an acrylic with a UV light, UV hardening acrylic. A lot of times you can get the same kind of stuff that like a manicurist might use for nails and things like that. I have this bottle, and I squeeze out the acrylic onto the spot where I'm going to be, and if I have to use a brush to clean it up a little bit, I will. And then I just shine a UV light on it, and it'll harden. But the thing is, it's toxic chemicals. You got to wear a mask and be in a well-ventilated area. You don't want to do this like indoors if you can help it, because it's not good for you. Even though this is just a little bit, the whole thing gets really, really hot, and then eventually dries. It does kind of have a little bit of a gummy texture, so try not to touch it too much. But then I also sealed everything with a matte varnish, which made it a little bit less shiny. And I could always do like another layer of acrylic if I wanted it to be like super glossy. Shiny. But before I did all that, I painted some of the ground blue. So I did like some like a darker blue and then a lighter blue towards the end, and just to kind of make it look like he's standing at a lakeside. So I thought that would be kind of fun. Sometimes I use water or whatever, but I just thought it was fun fighting at a riverbed. All right, so Mandalorians, Clan Kryze, first up. I didn't like this guy's paint job on the box because he looked like he was painted too similar to Jango Fett, and I thought that was going to obviously cause some confusion, especially once Jango Fett hits the table. So I decided to do him in all blue, kind of like the female Mando. And so this way they're a little bit more recognizable, and since he's not a named character anyway, I can certainly get away with doing a lot of that. Mando armor is really easy to do edge highlighting on. That's where you kind of paint the armor plate blue, and then take a very, very, very fine brush and do some lighter blue around the edges. Kind of makes all the armor plating pop a little bit. With our female Mando, she had that kind of sunken inverse chevron sort of on her helmet there. So that made painting the little white the white V pretty easy. For characters with the jetpacks, right? One of the things I would find out is, since I was doing it like this, initially didn't look very good with the smoke just hitting straight to the dirt. So I took like an old brush and dipped it in some off-white and kind of stippled it out a little bit to make it look like to make the explosion fit a little more naturally into the dirt there. And there's our Mandos. All right, next up is Bo-Katan. I decided I was going to do my named characters without any helmets on, so but I like to put the helmets on the bases, so this way I'm using all the pieces for the model, and it's just something I like to do. I hate doing faces. Faces are hard for me, but I decided to try to challenge myself a little bit. And again, faces are very, very tricky. I think that's one of the marks of a master painter. If you can really do a really good face, then that's awesome. So this one was okay. She's all right there. That's hard to get it to focus on her. Let me try and zoom in a little bit there. It's wanting to focus on. There we go. So yeah, she came out all right. I feel like that's clearly her. But what I thought was cool about this one is I did some cool stuff with the base. And the helmet also has the lines kind of sunken in, so it made painting her helmet a lot easier. But there was some cool stuff I did. I did 2 layers of acrylic on the water. So I did the first layer on, and then I painted some water splash effects, and then did another layer of the acrylic over top. So this way she was blasting out of the water, causing a little bit of sea foam or something like that in there. So I thought that was kind of fun, and I had some fun with the jetpack on that one. So having a little good time with it, and trying new techniques, trying things. I struggled a little bit with her shoulder pads, or her little shoulder insignia, the little night owls insignia on there, but we made it. We got through it. We got it done. It's pretty close. I give it a good 80%. But I mean, from a distance though, when she's on the tabletop, yeah, it looks great for me. So like this close, usually I don't have my face this close to the miniatures when I'm playing the game. I just need her to be recognizable, and I think I did that. All right, so we're looking at our Mandalorian Super Commandos, or AKA our Maul DeLoreans, and they are looking pretty good. They're pretty simple, kind of the same techniques I'd used on the Clan Kryze Mandalorians, just different color schemes. Instead of dark blue and then medium blue, I went with dark gray and red. Did edge highlighting with the armor, so for a slightly lighter red. I think the flames look pretty good coming out of the jetpack there, just like yellow at the top, then like a little bit of orange, and then some red down to the bottom, and then take the white back up and try to blot it on there a little bit, and just try to do different things. I know some people put wash, like Nuln Oil in there and made it even darker, but I did a little bit of stippling around there with to make the explosion kind of come out a little bit more. And I also wanted there to be no grass right near here, like he had almost killed the grass where he was taking off. But yeah, so but I like this color scheme of the dark gray and the red. It's not a full black, even though it probably looks black by contrast. It's really just a dark gray with then some light gray highlights on some of the cloth materials in there too. So it came out fairly well. I did some paint applications on her helmet to just draw some lines. I'm not sure if they are really supposed to be there or not, but I took some liberties on that one. I had shared Gar Saxon earlier on, I think on Twitter or something like that. I cleaned him up a little bit more. I wasn't completely done with him. I was mostly done with him. I had forgotten to put the helmet on the base, so I put the helmet down there, and I also cleaned up the explosion a little bit. Sometimes when you think you're finished with a miniature and then you photograph it, and you realize, oh, I also wanted to do this, or oh, that doesn't look that good. So I went back and did a little bit more with his smoke and with the base. But yeah. But no, I think he came out pretty good. I actually did a really dark blue with his armor, so he's not, or his cloth parts of his armor. So while the armor is dark gray, his cloth underneath the armor is actually a really, really dark blue. It's almost like a dark navy blue. And I just wanted him to stand out a little bit more, not just the fact that his head is different, but also wanted his cloth and armor, like his whole uniform is going to be a little different because he's pretty much a big deal. So yeah. All right, 501st clones. I struggled with these guys, not gonna lie. For some reason, these were some of the more difficult guys for me to do, and they're not always that way. I hadn't done clone armor in a while, and I was out of the normal primer that I would use, and I usually use a Tamiya white primer. It's a very, very bright primer, and I like to do apothecary white over the top of that. It gives me a really nice smooth white for the armor. But I ended up using just a Corax white, which wasn't as smooth, and it made my whites a little darker than I wanted them to be, and so it made my edge highlighting kind of contrast a little bit more. So they're just a little bit dirtier of a plastoid armor than I was hoping. I wanted them to be brighter, shinier, cleaner, and these guys are a little bit dirtier than I was aiming for. But that's okay, because clones can sometimes be dirty in battle. I just didn't want to do that with these guys, so I'll try differently. Now, fortunately for me, there's a whole lot more clones on the way. Obi-Wan's clones, Wolfpack, Mace Windu's clones. We're going to have a lot of different clone options, so I don't have to always use the 501st, which is pretty cool. I did slightly different paint schemes on the helmets of these two guys, but other than that, they're mostly the same color scheme, and I did make them both riverside, and I wanted them kind of facing a certain way, so this way the water could connect to each other. If I was doing a diorama, they're on different sides of the same river, or on the edges of a pond or something like that. So I thought that would be a fun thing to do with the bases. All right, next up is Rex. Rex was also difficult. He had the same kind of dirtier clone armor than I wanted. I mean, it does. I don't think it looks particularly dirty. I just wanted it brighter and whiter, especially after having seen so many other awesome paint jobs. There were certain parts that just weren't as clean as I would have liked. But from a distance, I think he still looks good. We got the helmet on the ground there. I was also surprised, like his hair seems a little bit long here. Or it raised a little bit higher than like when I look at Clone Wars. I was like Googling pictures of Clone Wars, Rex and without helmet and stuff like that. And so there, yeah, that's kind of how he came out there. But I mean, he's not too bad. Not too bad. It's it's definitely recognizable. Not the cleanest, but definitely from a distance, he looks great. All right, we're on to the heroes now. I've got Ahsoka here. Ahsoka was the hardest one for me to do. It had to do with the face with tattoos. For whatever reason, maybe they weren't as indented as I was expecting. And I just, I don't know. I was mixing like a custom color of orange to get right where I wanted it. And then so having some of the white lines kind of, and then going back to correct it. And then my orange had all dried up, and I just struggled with this particular one. But I mean, I got it good enough. It definitely from a distance it looks fine, but and especially since her head is kind of angled down a little bit, since you're typically playing, your head is usually above. So I'm usually looking at her like this. So I think she looks fine from this angle. But if I go from this angle, I can see little things that I wasn't super pleased with. But overall, I mean, she's pretty simple. She's mostly blue. A lot of her stuff is blue. There's some slightly different shades of blue, some metallic on the boots. And but the Leiku, her head tails really had lots of good lines that made it easier to see like where they should be, and so I didn't accidentally get off and like, oh wait a second, I'm the right ones are blue and the blue spots were blue and the white spots were white, and so that that was one of my goals when doing her, is make sure I didn't get the pattern incorrect or anything like that. So there she is. Also put some leaves on the base, so I tried some slightly different stuff there. All right, so Maul also was definitely a challenge. He's typically always going to be a challenge. One of the things I thought was most interesting with painting Maul is that there's like raised surfaces on his chest for where it's red, but on his face, the raised surfaces are the parts that are supposed to be black. So they inverted those two. So it was a little confusing at first. I got ready to sit. I sat down with Maul and I was like, all right, let's start working on these face tattoos first. And I was like, wait a second, which am I? And I had to keep going back between the artwork and then the model and the artwork and the model, because even though it shouldn't be hard, it's still a little tricky. I struggled with the eyes a little bit. But again, since I'm going to be looking at them usually from this kind of view, I can't even really see the eyes 9 times out of 10. The cloth was kind of turned out pretty nice. Lots of edge highlighting on the cloth. Lots of raised bits, lighter than the black, and nice metal legs on this guy. And I also put him on the shoreline, so he's got a little bit of water behind him as well. Really great sculpt on this guy. Good pose, holding the lightsaber out like that. It just screams that epic duel he had with Ahsoka. All right, next up is Asajj Ventress. I actually am fairly pleased with how she came out. The face was fun. The little lines. For some reason, my hand held steady trying to do face tattoos. Those weren't sculpted in, at least not that I could tell. So I had to freehand all of that, and I got lucky the first time. And I'm like, okay, good. I don't have to clean it up, because sometimes, especially when there's white involved on a character, if you screw it up the first time and then have to go back, sometimes the white can be chalky, and then it you just keep going over and over and overcorrecting, and then you just got too much paint on the model. Then you're like, oh no, I got to strip it off and start over again, and it becomes very problematic. But since I got the lines, I was happy with the lines the very first time on her face. I said, all right, I'm gonna leave these alone. I'm satisfied with that. The cloak came out good. I mixed like some purples and blues, and I think I put even like a tiny drop of red into the paint when I was mixing her cloak, and then I watered it out really good and did 2 coats of it. So I got this almost watercolor type of coverage on her cloak, and then went back and did some edge highlighting with like a lighter blue. But it came out really nice. And so I was happy with how the cloak came out. The middle, whatever you want to call this brown and gold thing, was nice. I used some Citadel, or I think runic gold or something like that on there, and yeah, and so I was pretty pleased. And again, glorious sculpt. I love the way the fingers are kind of pointing on the lightsaber. So she's holding it out, but she's also pointing at her mark, who she's going to get. All right, and last is Anakin Skywalker. I went with a lot of leaves on the base on Anakin Skywalker. I just wanted him to stand out a little bit more, and then the leaves kind of stuck out. You know, I've got like a little collections of different flock and different basing materials all over, and yeah, a lot of edge highlighting on him. I wanted the cloth to do good. I went back and forth on mixing colors to get that particular shade of red for the tunic, and then you know, I'm kind of liking the way the leather looks over the tunic. Lots of edge highlighting. I probably spent more time on the details on Anakin than maybe any other model, and I think he turned out maybe one of the best in the whole set. I think he's my favorite one out of everybody. I'm still not super crazy about lightsabers. I tend to, instead of drawing the white line all the way through, I tend to kind of illuminate them a little more right at the emitter and then have them fade into a darker color. And that seems to work out okay. But every part of Anakin, I think, I was pretty pleased with. So I'm really liking the way he turned out. Also, the terrain, I'd mixed some yellows and some oranges with the airbrush. I did mostly all airbrushing for the terrain. And then I did, you started with like a very light primer on the grading pieces. And I just kind of did waves of mixing a little bit of blue and then a lot of like dark gray and increasing, you know, I did probably about 4 coats of this. And then when I was done, I took like a metallic silver and just did some dry brushing over the top of it. This part hit a little thick, but overall dry brushing is really nice on grading because it hits those edges, and it made these whole gradings look pretty good, and it only took a few minutes. I mean, the airbrush, well, airbrushing may only take a few minutes. You still have to clean the airbrush, so there's more that goes on into that. But for the most part, mostly just airbrushing. Then it cleaned up a little bit, and I did some bits by hand, like I'll hit some panels and do little bits of red here and little bits of blue to make some of the panels and some of the lights on some of these kind of show up a little bit better. But mostly the terrain did not take very long. It was pretty quick, and then of course I did the little things like your Loth cat and stuff like that, or Chucha cat, right? I don't know. They're both basically the same to me. I don't know. Fictional cats all look the same to me. All right, everybody, so that has been a quick look at my painted core set for Star Wars Shatterpoint. I'd love to see some of your images and some of your great paint jobs. We have painting sections for lots of different games like Legion, X-Wing Armada, and Shatterpoint also in our Discord. And again, you can find out more information in the links in the description below. I want to thank my patrons. You guys are absolutely amazing and help make this channel possible. So thank you for your continued support. I will talk to you guys later. May the Force be with you. Live long and prosper. Be excellent to each other. Party on, dudes. So say we all. The spice must flow, and cowabunga.